Hello, hello.
Hello, regular Drews.
Welcome to episode number 39. We're going to be discussing Girl Detective number 13, Trade When Danger.
Well, aren't you a regular Nancy Drew?
We sure hope so, and we hope you are too.
Join us as we talk Nancy Drew cover to cover and click to click.
Welcome to Regular Nancy Drew.
Another 2005 publication.
Yeah.
There's a lot in 2005. They must have been really busy that year.
The one we're going to read next was also published in 2005.
Wow, okay. They just cranked
I
them out
know.
back then.
Did they all come out in 2005? They were just like, here's the whole series, there you go, bye. And then noped out.
Jeez. Well, I guess if you have a bunch of different ghostwriters, it's easier to do that. But
Oh, I guess so, yeah. You could just have them all write it at the same
yeah.
time.
Huh. All right.
Wow.
I would assumed we'd be on 2006 by now, but at
Surely,
least. But no.
or that it would have been 2003,
Yeah.
Anywhere around there, but no.
Well, we've kind of been going
2005.
We've always done one later. We haven't jumped around as much as we normally do. So I think it was 1 and then 3
true.
and then
that's
10.
True.
And, yeah. So.
Yeah.
But
that's a good point.
I don't know about you. I was relieved to finally have one that I didn't absolutely hate.
Yeah, same. Although it irritates me. This one irritates me quite a bit. But I didn't hate it. I didn't hate reading it. It was just when I got to the end, I was like, oh, I sigh.
Yeah.
Not that the ending was disappointing, but I'll talk about it later. But yeah. It was fine.
I think if you look at it too closely, it does fall apart a little bit, but it's certainly better than any of the other ones we've read so far.
Yeah. Oh, well, definitely. Yeah. Definitely. And also, thank God it was non-offensive. I was waiting for it too, because obviously we in this book we go to Hawaii, and I was like, oh God. What are we going to experience? But it wasn't that bad.
No, it's fine.
I don't think. We didn't delve too much into it. We briefly discussed the folklore, and that's where I was worried, what are we going to say about this? It's going to be offensive. But we didn't really talk about it that much. So I was like, okay.
Kind of relevant, but...
Yeah. But, we discussed it enough in a way that, we knew what it was. It wasn't like they ignored it, and it was central to the plot of the book, but they didn't really discuss it's how they felt about it or anything, there wasn't any weird shade or stuff like that in regards to it. So I was like, okay, whew. Yeah. Wipe it out.
Yeah. Thank goodness we don't need any more of that, because last time was rough.
But mostly I was just annoyed with the fact that we had to go to San Francisco and then go to Hawaii. Especially because at the beginning of the book, we talk so much about, exciting San Francisco things they're going to do.
Yeah.
They talk about going to Chinatown, and they talk about taking a tour of Alcatraz. And I'm like, oh my God, are we going to have an Alcatraz mystery?
Ooh, that'd be fun.
Wouldn't it have been so cool?
Yeah.
And Bess gets a mysterious note in a fortune cookie, and I'm like, oh my God. Someone's trying to warn them about something, but it's not relevant to the story at all.
No, it's just a cliffhanger thing.
And then we just go to Hawaii, and all the mysteries in Hawaii, and I'm like, why? San Francisco deserves its own thing.
It does.
Clearly you were getting into some good stuff there, but then we just about face and turn.
I know they have to set up the mystery, but they just took so long to do it that it was like, well, switching gears here. Now we're in Hawaii, and then they didn't have as much time to actually do the Hawaii thing. So, oh well.
Well, and I think it would have made so much more sense if the book started off on the tail end of Nancy, Bess, and George's vacation instead of the beginning.
Oh yeah, that would have been nice.
Because I think then we would have felt okay, well, they're wrapping this up, so what's going to happen next? If that's the start of the book, then you're curious, what could possibly be next?
Right. Ooh.
And then also, you don't feel like you're waiting for the exciting things they're going to do on this vacation. You feel like, okay, well, they've, you know, they've done those things. Even though, like, we as the reader wouldn't have experienced it,
Right.
like, we wouldn't have felt like we were expecting it, which I was. And then I felt disappointed that I didn't get a tour of Alcatraz. So, yeah.
I know, they try so hard for these to be like, or not for them to be educational, but to have those educational aspects in them. It's like, give me more Alcatraz. Let's get the history of that. Let's get more San Francisco information. But
Yeah.
not as much. But that's okay.
No. I also thought it was an interesting place to set it at the beginning of this mystery. Yeah. And I wasn't sure why they chose that instead of, like, I don't know, maybe something like somewhere colder, like I don't know, somewhere they maybe like a ski vacation or something that was like less, so that Hawaii would be more of a contrast. Right. You know what I mean? Because I felt like, I don't know why I felt like that would be necessary, but just like I just felt like it was, San Francisco was just like a weird, because it was so much in and of itself, like such a iconic place full of a lot of already like really established mysteries. It's on the West Coast, which is like serial killer central. Right. And so it's like it already holds so much expectation, whereas if they had just gone to like Colorado or something, or somewhere up in the mountains or something, or Vermont on like a ski vacation, then it would have been a lot more impactful to be like, oh, actually, we have this very tropical mystery. I don't know.
Right,
you know?
Yeah. No, that definitely makes sense.
Yeah.
My best guess is just that, like, proximity, it's the closest. I mean, if you're going to fly to Hawaii, you might as well fly out of, I guess, Los Angeles or San Francisco,
That's
you
a
know?
good point.
So maybe it was
That's
just, like, convenient. It made it seem easier. Because if you're in Vermont and somebody's like, do you want to go to Hawaii now? You're going to be like, that's kind of far. But if it's just like, you hop on this one plane and then it's a direct flight, that's a little bit easier to sell, I guess.
That's true.
So. I mean, not that that's relevant at all, but
yeah. I mean, it's also, I guess, that the premise of the book kind of revolves around publishing,
right?
And so,
does it ever?
And so I guess it has to happen in a major city.
That makes sense.
But
yeah.
I don't know. San Francisco feels like a weird choice to me. Maybe like LA or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. Which is odd.
Oh well.
Oh well. So overall, though, it sounds like you liked it.
Yes. I mean, it's not.
It's good.
It's not as good as some of the other series that we read, and I expected that, but it's way better than the previous 3. So that we've done.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, definitely. Yeah. I think just
sorry. Go ahead.
No, go. I was just gonna say, I think the Girl Detective series in general is just a flop.
Yeah,
for me.
And that's okay.
It's just overall, which is really disappointing because I felt like it had a lot of things going for it at the beginning, but unfortunately, they don't override all the other crap. So, what were you gonna say?
Well, it is a little different to have one not set in River Heights as well. I wonder if that made any difference to it, but
yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah. Definitely it did. The stakes were so much higher and it was so much more interesting.
Maybe that's why.
And less like hometown and like exciting, and like we had an actual literal cliffhanger.
Right.
Chapter ending in this one, which was fun. But yeah. So much, so different. And so it speaks to like, well, then why was all of the series, or I guess all the series that we read, why did it have to occur in River Heights? You know?
Right. I guess it didn't. It was just fine, but we don't get any Carson, Hannah, no Deirdre, no Ned. Right. So it really is kind of more what we're used to in that way.
You know what I think would be a great happy middle? Because I always talk about, and I'm always, it was kind of baffling to me that like, I do seem to enjoy the mysteries that take place outside of River Heights more than I enjoy the ones that take place in River Heights. Really? But I love the River Heights lore and the River Heights like characters and like all of the history and everything. I love that so much, and that makes me so interested. But all the mysteries in River Heights are boring.
Yeah.
They're boring AF. Like, I don't care about this missing girl that's not really missing. I don't care about who squashed the fucking zucchini. Like, I just don't, or squash or whatever.
No, I think it was
I
zucchini.
don't care. Yeah.
Squash the squash. Oh god.
But I think what would be a great happy middle was if it's Nancy traveling around to solve all these mysteries, but we still get our River Heights people cameo. Like maybe Harold Safer is in like Switzerland,
right,
or something.
Oh, that'd be
and we're
fun.
like, Harold, what are you doing here?
Obviously
or like,
for the Swiss cheeses.
or like Mrs. Mahoney or something has tasked us with helping her cousin in wherever, because we do see that quite often in the mystery stories.
That'd be cool.
But then also we could get that, like, not what the mystery stories do, and that after we get the, you know, the introduction to the mystery, we just absolutely leave it behind. We could have them kind of intersect. Like maybe the mystery that Mrs. Mahoney introduces us to with some relative in some foreign country or something. Maybe that has something to do with the Mahoney business and Mahoney business practices that, like, you know, impact what's going on in River Heights. I'm just saying there could be both. We could have both, and it would be glorious. But
that would be amazing. And maybe they do that at some point, and we just haven't gotten there.
Maybe
in the series,
we just don't know.
That would be best of both worlds for sure.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite part had to have been the nod to our actual real Nancy Drew history with Ed and Harriet hiring Mildred to write the story of Nancy Drew solving mysteries. That's just amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah. This book was very, very meta.
Yes.
So meta, it like broke my brain at points.
Yeah.
Especially at the end there. Like, I didn't realize it right off the bat. Like, because at the beginning, we're just kind of introduced to Ed and Harriet, and I was like, oh, okay, you know, whatever. But then when they brought up Mildred, I was like, oh, my God. Yeah. It's Ed as in Edward Stratemeyer, Harriet as in Harriet Stratemeyer, and Mildred as in Mildred Wirt Benson.
Who own a publishing company, as in Stratemeyer Syndicate, and then their ghostwriter.
Mildred is like their author.
Yeah.
Yes.
Who has been hired to write stories about Nancy Drew. So Nancy is...
mystery stories.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah. Amazing.
Very good fan service. Thank you, Girl Detective series.
Yes. Excellent.
Oh, goodness.
Definitely the highlight of the book.
Yes.
But I also thought that, like, their characterization of those people was interesting, because obviously this came out in 2005, and all of those people were deceased at this point. And so I thought that was the way they talked about Ed and Harriet. I thought was very interesting. Yeah. Mildred, I felt like, was pretty spot on. But Ed and Harriet, I thought, were just like,
yeah.
What are you trying to say? But yeah.
Goodness. Yeah, they never actually give us any last names in the book, too. So we could just, you know, assume that this is those people. But it is interesting that they made Ed and Harriet husband and wife and not father and daughter. Yes. But that's okay.
Yes. I even, at that point, I had to look up. I was like, wait, what was Harriet Stratemeyer's husband's name? Because I was like, maybe her husband was also named Ed, and I'm just like, not. But no.
No.
That's definitely just her dad's name.
Yeah. Oh, well. But
yeah.
No, it was great in that sense. But I guess that can take us into our 3 words if we want to.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I mean, coming off of that, then one of our 3 words has to be meta.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's so meta. Probably like meta travel. There was a lot of travel in this book. Like, to San Francisco, to Hawaii, to Maui. Like, there was just a lot of back and forth travel. And it also impacted, like, the mystery, like the whole mysteries based off the fact that Mildred traveled somewhere and all kinds of travel in it. I guess mythology, Hawaiian mythology.
There we go. That's a good one. Yeah. I like that. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
All right. Well.
Yeah.
Do you want to start our summary?
Sure. So, as we kind of alluded to, we start off our mystery in San Francisco. Nancy, Bess, and George are on vacation. no mystery involved at the beginning. They're just on vacation, enjoying themselves. They hop on a trolley to do some sightseeing. They're trying to catch a tour of Alcatraz. This is, again, what I was disappointed that we didn't get to. But on the trolley, before they even really, they're like maybe like 2 hours into their vacation at this point, they meet a local couple named Ed and Harriet. Harriet, right off the bat, seems like stone-faced, like cold, like distant, like not super friendly, but whatever. But Ed is friendly, and they all strike up a conversation. But as they're chatting kind of about where they're from, suddenly the trolley like jerks to a halt, and Nancy and Harriet glance up to the front and see that the driver is like missing. Turns out he was just like slumped over in his seat and they couldn't see him, but they think he's missing. And then the cable car begins to like slide backwards right towards a red SUV that's like struggling to get out of the way. So Bess, of course, our mechanic Bess now in this series, quickly jumps into action, knowing that there's going to be an e-brake at the back of the car. So she runs over to the e-brake, pulls the e-brake. Everyone is saved thanks to Bess, and everybody is very grateful, especially the other passengers on the trolley, like remarking on Bess's quick thinking and skill. It's very satisfying for our dear Bess. And we learn that apparently the driver had a heart attack, and that's why there was this almost near accident, but he's okay. The paramedics came. He's still alive. He goes to the hospital. I think we even check in on him later, and he's okay. But obviously now we can't take this trolley, so Ed and Harriet invite the girls to come with them to catch another one. And along the way, they all properly introduce themselves. And when Nancy tells Ed her name, he stares at her like super intently, which makes her super uncomfortable. But she kind of brushes it off. They catch another cable car, and then they depart later and like say goodbye. So they go get their tickets to get on the boat to Alcatraz. And as soon as they're in line for that, who do they see again but Ed and Harriet? What are you doing here? Ed and Harriet invite them to come to a nearby cafe and get some hot chocolate. It's in Ghirardelli Square, which is a very iconic San Francisco location. But this is odd. This is super odd because Ed and Harriet were headed home, but like they show up here now.
Mm-hmm.
And also, Harriet's entire demeanor seems to have changed. Like, she was, like, super aloof, but now she's, like, calling Bess dear and as being, like, super sweet and effusive. But they're like, okay, this is kind of weird, but it is cold outside, so let's go get some hot chocolate. We can catch a boat tour later. Okay. So they sit down in the cafe, and then Ed takes a look at Nancy and asks, Nancy Drew, the famous teen detective, I presume? This is so creepy.
Right.
Obviously, they're very surprised that they knew who Nancy was, but I guess it's not out of the realm of possibility because she has been in, like, newspapers and stuff. But just as this happens, and they're kind of ooked out by that, Bess opens a fortune cookie that she received with her hot chocolate, and inside was a message that says, beware of new acquaintances. They may be older, but they are not always wiser. What the heck? Okay, I just have to say at this point that this is absolutely never explained. This incredibly on the nose message.
Right.
Just some message from the universe, I guess, that this was not intentional. They just received this, and then that's it. It just spooks them out. They freak out. They say goodbye, and they spend the rest of the day like touring and sightseeing because of this fortune cookie. I just can't. What?
Oh, it is really weird. It's super weird.
Yeah.
And it's not like someone sent this fortune cookie to them on purpose.
That's
to,
what
like,
I thought had to have happened.
Yeah.
I assumed, I was like, okay, Ed and Harriet are up to something shady, something to do, and then someone who made this fortune cookie or is somehow related slipped this fortune cookie in there to warn the girls about it, right? I thought, surely that's what's going on. Nope. No, definitely not. Just a creepy fortune in a fortune cookie that freaked you out for the rest of the day.
Yep. And does lead Bess to,
So
like,
funny.
be the voice of reason once again.
Right. Well, okay. This also points to a theory, like points to our larger theory that Bess is like universe touched.
Yes.
And like psychic and has ESP and all of this
Possibly
stuff.
a time
Bess
traveler.
is the one who receives Bess is the one who receives this message and is the one who like convinces them that they need to like GTFO.
Yeah.
Which is just speaks to like so much about Bess, like just knowing things that the others don't know.
That's true.
In a very interesting way. Yeah.
Lends to our theory very well. I like that.
Uh-huh.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so obviously this freaks them out quite a lot, and Bess is like, "All right, let's get away from these people right now. Like, let's hightail it
Yeah.
out of here." So, like you said, they go out and spend the day sightseeing and touring the city. I think they do end up going to Alcatraz eventually, and then I think they go back to the hotel, and then they decide to go out for dinner that night. And what do they see at dinner? Ed and Harriet walk in again.
These creepy motherfuckers.
So obviously this is super creepy, and they're like, what are you doing here? Like, we thought you said that you already had dinner plans. And they were like, well, actually we tracked you down on purpose. We because earlier in the conversation, I think when they were having the hot chocolate, they asked them where they were staying, and Nancy stupidly just tells them the name of their hotel.
That's right, I forgot about that.
It's like, what's wrong with you, Nancy? Like, you're such a good detective, and you don't even take these like basic precautions when people are acting
She has
super shady.
Zero sense of self-preservation. Always. 0 sense. She can't even remember to put gas in her car. She has
True.
no sense of self-preservation.
But yeah, Ed and Harriet are like, oh, well, we just called your hotel and we asked them where you were, and they told us that you weren't in at the moment, but you had asked the concierge for directions to a restaurant, and so we put 2 and 2 together, and now we're here. Super creepy.
Okay, what concierge is telling them the itinerary of like guests?
Right?
Like, that's effed up.
Right.
Like, oh, you need to be speaking to that hotel.
Yeah. I feel like that should be against policy to give out information like that. But
no, definitely.
Whatever.
Well, it definitely is.
Yeah.
Like, they're not supposed to give out. And in fact, a hotel that they stay at later definitely doesn't give them any information. They won't tell them other guests, like, room numbers.
Oh, that's right.
Or even confirm and deny that, like, they're staying there. So, like...
Weird.
Good hotels versus bad hotels.
Yes.
Just saying.
Well, this was a bad hotel that gave out Nancy's information, and now Ed and Harriet are here, and they end up explaining that actually they've been wanting to ask for Nancy's help with a mystery, but because she's on vacation, they didn't want to bother her or like ruin her vacation. And Nancy kind of laughs and is like, if only they knew how often this happened, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So Nancy kind of pulls it out of them that actually they are publishers. They own this publishing company called, what is it? Crime Time Books or something like that.
Yeah. I think it's Crime Time.
Yeah. So they own this publishing company, and one of their ghostwriters that writes for them, but who is also one of their like personal friends and started working for them, whose name is Mildred. She's one of their mystery writers. She actually flew to Hawaii because her next book involves, or it's going to revolve around these night marchers that are these spirits in Hawaiian mythology that essentially like can hurt people if you come into contact with them. And Mildred's next book was going to revolve around these night marchers, and she has gone to Hawaii to kind of research them and learn more about them. But she's now missing. She got on the plane. We know that she was actually on the plane to Hawaii, but she never arrived, or like after arriving, they don't know where she went or where she is now. So they're just super concerned, and they're like, Nancy, we would really like for help figuring out where Mildred is. They explained that they had actually already booked tickets to go to Hawaii themselves, but then something came up with their business, and they call it an emergency. I don't know if it actually is, but they need to stay in town. So now they have this idea that Nancy will go in their place. And then there's this whole thing, well, there's 2 of you and 3 of us. And they're like, no problem. We'll just buy a 3rd ticket to Hawaii. No big deal, right? Which is also very suspicious. Like, why are they so eager to get these strangers
so weird
on a plane? So yeah, that's the plan now. They're gonna go look for Mildred in Hawaii.
They do some brief checking to make sure that Ed and Harriet actually are who they say they are, like Nancy calls, like to make sure that the publishing company is legit and all that stuff. And it seems to be. They seem to at least exist as people. So they're like, okay, let's go off to Hawaii.
I feel like this is how human trafficking happens. Just
I know.
Don't you want a ticket to Hawaii? And then it's not that at all. And I was like, where is this going? I was really surprised when they actually landed in Hawaii. But
yeah, not some like fake plane. Like,
right.
Oh, get on our private jet. It's gonna be great.
Yeah.
And then you end up like in like cold, frozen wasteland and like shoved into a hole in the ground.
Sorry.
Anyway. Luckily, that doesn't happen. They do make it to Hawaii just fine. They get off the plane, and then they head over to Mildred's cousin's house to speak with her, because that's where they're going to be staying. And we meet Mildred's cousin, Eliza, and her many birds. She has many, many birds. Honestly, that should have been one of the words at the beginning. It should have been like birds, because so many birds.
True.
She tells us that she's beside herself with worry about Mildred, but Nancy notes that she doesn't seem that upset. Whatever. She tells Nancy that she's called all the hospitals and there's been no sign of Mildred since getting off the plane. She tells Nancy that the last person to see Mildred was a passenger on the plane named Jamie Ching, who sat next to her. But Eliza has to head back to work now, and Corey, she works at as a botanist at a cosmetics company.
Yeah.
They're also, so we didn't mention this at the beginning, there are also quite a lot of similarities between this book and Creature of Kapu Cave, her interactive PC game.
That might be why I liked it so much as well.
I didn't look up to see if it was an influence or based off of at all, but it would not surprise me in the least if it was. There are certainly way more similarities between this and Creature of Kapu Cave than there were between Uncivil Acts and Ghost of Thornton Hall.
Absolutely. So I've never seen anything that says that this is supposed to be based off of it. I've only ever seen one of the mystery stories. It's Mystery on Maui. I've seen that listed as like the inspiration for it. I don't know. I don't know. So maybe, this absolutely could have been, and maybe it's just never been written down, but I definitely see the similarities.
Yeah. So once Eliza leaves to go back to work, Nancy and George decide to snoop through her house to confirm her story. Well, Bess takes a nap. I love this so much. This is one of my favorite scenes in the whole book. Yeah. When there are like just no compunctions. Nancy is just like, well, time to look through all this stuff. And Bess is like, yeah, y'all have fun. I'm going to go take a nap.
Lovely.
So on point.
Amazing.
For all of these characters.
Yes.
I also love the fact that Nancy just, at this point, seems to have just, like, accepted that, like, it's a little bit of an invasion of privacy, but it's worth it to find Mildred. And I'm like, yes, thank you. Yeah. Finally, we're getting into the right, like, morality groove with Nancy here. She's not like, oh, no, really, it's fine, and, all this stuff. It's like, it is an invasion of privacy, but I'm willing to do it. Like, perfect. But so they look through everything, and unfortunately it does seem like Eliza may have lied about Mildred not showing up to the house, because they find a dress of Mildred's in the closet. It has like her name in the tag, and they also find a diary entry. I thought this was sketchy evidence, but they read through her diary that she had when she was like a teenager, and they find an entry from when Eliza was 15 that kind of describes a relationship with Mildred that was kind of contrary to how she made it seem. Like, she made it seem like they were super close and like best friends or whatever, but like back when she was 15, she clearly did not feel that way. And I just kind of thought like, okay, well, she was 15.
Yeah.
Like, they're full adults now. It's very possible that she did hate her when she was 15 and now they're friends. Like, whatever, Nancy. But okay. But so at dinner that night, Nancy asks her about the dress. She like straight up's like, hey, I think Mildred probably was here at your house. We found her dress. She doesn't make up a story about why she was actually in Eliza's closet, so it's okay. But Eliza's super defensive about it, but her story is that Mildred gave her the dress 5 years ago, which also, that makes sense also. I feel like that's a fine explanation, but Okay. But the way she talks about it also doesn't imply a friendly relationship between them. So that's interesting. That's also never explained. We never get an explanation of why they may not have a friendly relationship, but whatever. Nancy does bring that up, and Eliza kind of denies it. She's like, no, we're excellent friends. So, whatever. She does finally say that it doesn't matter. She knows what happened to Mildred anyway. She was abducted by supernatural forces, is what Eliza claims. Obviously, she's talking about the Night Marchers here. She says she will not talk about it, though, until they get home. So they're like, okay, let's go home. And they go home, and Nancy brings it up again. But Eliza now says, I can't talk about it. I'm tired. I have to go to work in the morning. We'll talk about it later.
Yep.
This is odd.
Yeah.
So Eliza's being cagey. Eliza's being weird. Do we believe her about the dress? I don't know. Things are kind of stacking up against our friend Eliza. So in the middle of the night, Nancy wakes up because she heard a creak in the hall. She gets out of bed to investigate and finds Eliza in a nightgown covered in mud and scratches. Eliza says, I was out searching for Mildred. I barely escaped an army of ghosts. Woo!
Bum, bum, bum.
Spooky!
Oh, this chapter's called The Haunted Message. I didn't even put that together, but the San Francisco part of things made me think of Message in a Haunted Mansion. Because they do kind of mention some of the whatever. Sorry. Anyway, so Nancy, obviously, she's shocked to see Eliza in the middle of the night, all covered in scratches and whatever, and mud and all. But she doesn't believe her, really. She doesn't think that these night marchers really exist. She doesn't think that she actually saw them like she claimed. But Eliza's convinced that Mildred was taken by them. She's adamant that she saw them tonight. And Nancy says, well, you know what? Okay, sure. Take me to them then. Let's go. And Eliza's kind of hesitant to do so, but she eventually agrees, yes, I will take you to where I saw them tonight. So let's go. It's 3 a.m. at this point, and they're going to go hiking along this trail near a volcano, right?
Crazy.
I know. So they go, and it's really dark and everything's slippery, so it's kind of a treacherous hike, but they don't see any night marchers. And Nancy's like, all right, well, you haven't proven anything to me yet. And Eliza's like, wait, there's one more place that I know of where night marchers are kind of known to frequent. There's this famous bluff where apparently back in the day, some British soldiers were sacrificed there. So Nancy convinces Eliza to take her there. They go there. Again, they don't see any night marchers there, but they do see a piece of paper stuck between some stones near the edge of the bluff. So they go and they look at the paper, and it says, help me, the night marchers are here. And then it starts to say MILDR, like Mildred was writing her name, but then was dragged off before she could finish writing it. So creepy.
Terrifying.
So creepy. Yeah. But yeah, Nancy's not convinced that this is proof, but Eliza's like, all right, this means she's gone. There's no hope. It's my fault that I wasn't there to pick her up at the airport, and now she's gone forever. She must have stopped on the way from the airport because she was so excited to start her research that Eliza's just like, oh no, my cousin's gone forever, and what am I gonna do? And she's really upset. But Nancy starts to wonder. She's still really suspicious of Eliza. She starts to wonder if maybe Eliza even had planted the note herself. But she doesn't say anything like that to Eliza. The next morning, after Nancy actually goes back to sleep and gets some rest, she's talking to Bess and George about this. Eliza has already left for work for the day, and they decide that they need to compare Eliza's handwriting from the diary to what was on the note. So Nancy's flipping through the diary, and she actually flips to a random page and sees on that page something about, we went to Grandpa's funeral today. If only Mildred and company weren't in the picture, I'd inherit all the money. Oh, big possible motive here, right?
Right. So what Nancy decides to do is she decides to go ahead and get in touch with Harriet and ask her to fax her a sample of Mildred's handwriting so that she can compare it to the note, right? So the note does appear to match to Mildred's handwriting, but they decide not to take any chances, so they take it to the police station to have it analyzed by an expert. So I just have to say, that it's not only the River Heights police that'll just fall over themselves to do whatever Nancy Drew asks them to. It's also any police department in the country. Just like, absolutely, we would love to do that for you, Nancy. I can't believe you would ask us to do that. We're so thankful that you would bless us with your presence.
Anything else we can do for you today? Like, want some fingerprints ran real quick?
Right. Also, it only takes an hour. Awesome. Yay! Great. I'm glad you have a, handwriting expert sitting right there who is waiting to do nothing but analyze these things for us. Thank you so much.
Perfect.
Crazy. Also, like, is handwriting analysis, like, is that something that the police, is that a science that we use to, like, solve crimes these days? Maybe, I would say, like, maybe in, like, a court of law, you might have, like, a handwriting analysis expert or something. But that's just, like, a forensic test that we do on things to solve crimes.
I have a hard time believing that they have an in-house expert that works for them full-time, That seems a little far-fetched, but whatever.
It also bugs me because this is, like, probably the biggest, like, moving forward of the plot in this whole book is, like, analyzing the handwriting. Because that's basically what we do. Right? To rule out people. And that just feels like that's the only thing moving the plot forward, and it's like, nah, it doesn't feel real. Yeah. It's kind of like, Okay, so while we're waiting for the police to do the handwriting analysis, they decide to try to track down Jamie Ching, the passenger who last saw Mildred. The police are not helpful in this regard, but they do mention that he lives in Maui. So Nancy uses that information to call information and get in touch with him. Apparently, he's a surfing instructor at the Blue Wave Hotel. Nancy speaks to him on the phone, but he doesn't admit to knowing much. He's just like, yeah, that's, the last time I saw her, I talked to the police. That's about it. Nancy, however, still wants to meet him in person just to be sure that there's not more that he's not saying. So she books a flight to Maui for the three of them and reserves a hotel room at the Blue Wave. They then head back to the station to check on the handwriting analysis. Turns out that the handwriting on the note actually doesn't match either of the samples, Eliza's diary or the sample of writing that we have from Mildred herself. So it seems as though someone has made a convincing forgery, someone else that we don't know about yet. Interesting. But the girls don't have any other leads, so they go ahead and head off to Maui to try to track down Jamie. Once there, they decide to head to the beach, where Nancy and George head to the surf shack. Surf shack. Okay, another parallel between this book and Kapu Cave, to book surfing lessons with Jamie. Nancy, using an alias, and George manage to do this, get to the surf shack, schedule these surf lessons, and they meet Jamie. He seems fine, benign, very nice, takes them out on the waves. Everything's going fine. They're surfing until Nancy spots a shark in the water, because of course she does.
Yeah.
Of course we see a shark. So she starts yelling, telling everybody, hey, shark in the water, go in or whatever. Everybody gets the message, gets to shore. But the shark is coming straight towards Nancy. Literally, like, about to take a chomp out of her, like, opens its mouth, like, coming for her. So Nancy punches it in the nose.
Yeah, she does.
Twice. Of course, Nancy Drew punches a shark in the nose in this book. Of course she does.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly, this should convince you to read the book just on its own.
Yeah.
Like, you should just read the book just because this is the book in which Nancy punches a shark in the nose. I want that, like, tagline on the cover of this book.
Right.
Because, oh my God.
Oh my gosh.
She punches it in the nose twice, actually.
The cover does have a shark fin on it.
Oh my God. I didn't even realize that.
It's not Nancy punching the shark.
I love it.
But it is some good foreshadowing.
That's excellent. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
And then the shark swims away. So we're fine. Nancy makes it to shore safely. Everybody's fine. She does determine from this incident, though, this is like her deciding factor in taking Jamie off the suspect list, because he was just incredibly concerned about her safety. So she's like, oh, he's way too much of a sweetheart to have had anything to do with Mildred's disappearance.
That's the deciding
Okay,
factor.
Nancy.
Yeah.
Oh, Lord. Anyway, so Nancy's like, okay, well, it's not him. Let's all go have dinner together. He's also apparently very cute. I'll just throw that out there also. He's supposed to be very attractive. So that probably had something to do with it too. He's like, yeah, totally. Let's go out. But I do have to meet my sister tonight, so I'm going to bring her along. Sure, great. More the merrier. At dinner, we meet her. Her name is Robin. Turns out Robin is getting her PhD in Hawaiian mythology.
What a coincidence.
This is a perfect segue for Nancy to bring up Mildred and the Night Marchers. But when Nancy brings this up, both Jamie and Robin kind of shift in their seats a little bit. Okay, we're going to have to talk about this encounter later because I have some thoughts about this. Yeah. Jamie, obviously not knowing that Nancy is Nancy, the person who he had spoken with earlier, because remember she was using an alias, admits some more details throughout this conversation. So he says, yes, he was in San Francisco with Robin's professor, who invited him along to visit some colleges while the professor was interviewing for other teaching positions. Okay. And then he flew back with the professor to Honolulu, where he sat next to Mildred. He sticks to a story, though, that he didn't see what happened to her after. She just, disappeared at the crowd in the airport, and he didn't see her after that. Okay. But when he pulls out his pen to sign the check, we see written on the pen in gold are the words, Mildred's pen. Mm-hmm. Oh, my God.
Way to stick to your story, dude. So he explains this away. He says, oh, actually, on the plane, you have to fill out these customs cards whenever you arrive. So I probably just borrowed her pen to fill out that form and then forgot to give it back to her. No big deal, right? So Nancy decides, hey, maybe that professor who was also on the flight, you said the police talked to him, right? Maybe it would be a good idea for me to try to talk to him as well, see if maybe he knows anything more about where Mildred went or if he saw anything else. And you know what happens? But they're getting up to leave the restaurant and they see a man, I guess, picking up a to-go order at the hostess stand, and it's the professor. Wonderful. So Nancy goes over to him and they introduce him as being Robin's professor and all. And Nancy starts asking him about if he saw Mildred on the flight or if he saw anything. And he's like, no, absolutely not. I have no idea who you're talking about. And she's like, well, the police said that they spoke to everyone who sat around Mildred. So did they not call you? And he was like, no, haven't talked to the police at all. Nancy thought that this is kind of weird since supposedly the professor, Jamie and the professor didn't get seats together in the plane, but he was just directly in the row in front of them. So that is pretty strange. But okay, whatever. Nancy the next day decides, okay, now we need to try to get a sample of Jamie's handwriting so that we can have the police compare that to the note as well. Bess actually volunteers to hang out on the beach so that she can kind of watch to see whenever he leaves the surf shack, and then she can go in and sneak in. And there's this logbook that he's writing in, so she's just planning to grab a page from that, and then that's kind of the plan. So Nancy and George, while Bess is going to go stake out the beach, they decide that they're going to go hiking in the Eau Valley, which supposedly is a beautiful hike. So they just have a few hours to kill that morning. So they go on their hike. But unfortunately, it starts to rain, when they get close to this waterfall, and they're like, oh, we should probably book it out of here in case there's a flood or something. So they leave. They get back on the trail to head back to the car. And who do they see? Ed and Harriet have shown up in Hawaii.
Oh my God.
If alarm bells aren't going off already, why did they not start going off at this point?
So terrifying.
Right. So Nancy's like, what are you doing here? You said you had a business emergency and that's why you had to stay in San Francisco. We took your tickets. Why are you here? And Ed and Harriet are just like, oh, that old thing. It finished up way faster than we had planned. And we, we didn't know how much progress you'd been making. And we know you only got here yesterday, but we're just so worried we decided to just fly in anyway. So now these people have sunk in 5 tickets to Hawaii. whatever. This seems like a very expensive venture, but whatever. Nancy's like, okay, but like, how did you find us on this trail here in Hawaii?
Out in the middle of nowhere.
Right. So it turns out they're all staying at the same hotel as them, and when they checked into the hotel, they'd actually run into Bess, who told them, like, they pressured Bess into telling them where Nancy and George were, so that's when they decided, instead of just, like, waiting for them to come back, went and found them on the trail.
Or call them.
Right.
This is insane to me, and
So
I
creepy.
do not believe it, because let me just say, they didn't fly to Hawaii, the mainland, where Mildred was supposedly supposed to have disappeared. They fly to Maui.
Right. And just
Why would they
happened to
do
run into
that
Bess there?
and just happen to stay at the same hotel? That makes no sense.
You know what? No, they do mention that they had called Eliza, who was like, oh, no, they went to Maui to follow this lead.
Okay,
So
okay.
Ed and Harriet did know that they were no longer staying with
Okay.
Eliza, but still,
Okay.
that took a lot of planning in advance, especially because they'd already canceled their plane ticket. And Nancy, Bess, and George
Right.
have only been in Hawaii for one day now, or I guess this is day 2
Yeah.
technically. So by the next day, they've already repurchased plane tickets to Hawaii and arranged to go to Maui instead of Honolulu.
Bonkers. How much did your business emergency take up? Like 2 hours?
Right.
Like,
Okay.
woo.
Yeah, so Nancy's just like, why were you so obsessed with getting me here if you were just going to be here by the next day anyway? This is getting weirder and weirder by the second. So whatever. They all go back to the hotel, and Bess tells Nancy, first she's like, I'm so sorry. They forced me to tell them about where you were. And Nancy's like, it's fine. But what happened with Jamie? And she's like, oh yeah, I was able to get the writing sample from him. They faxed it to the police. And they very quickly confirmed that Jamie could not have forged the note. It's definitely not his handwriting. But then at this point, Nancy decides, you know what, I need to look into Ed and Harriet a little bit more because this is getting creepier and creepier by the second. So this is where she goes to the front desk of the hotel and is like, can you tell me their room number? And they're like, no, we don't give out that kind of information about our guests.
Yeah.
But I think she like happens to see them like going up the elevator.
Yeah.
So she goes and looks to see what floor they're going to. And then she runs up the stairs really quickly and then waits until they're in their room. And she like sneaks over to their room and like listens at the door where she hears them like yelling at each other, like having a real argument. But then she listens a little bit longer and realizes, okay, maybe they're not fighting. They're just really upset. Harriet is like inconsolable about Mildred being missing. They're both kind of distraught. Ed's trying to calm her down a little bit. And we just hear him be like, no, Nancy's going to find her. It's going to be okay. Don't worry about it. Right. And this is when Nancy's like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to knock on the door at this point and just like ask them more about, Eliza and Mildred's grandfather and like the inheritance and the whole story behind who Mildred and company are, right? So she knocks on the door. Right. Ed and Harriet calm down a little bit, and she asks them about it. She learns that Mildred actually didn't inherit any money either. It went to other people in the family. So because it said Mildred and company, that was kind of misleading. There's this whole thing where it's like the grandfather was super rich, but they had twin sons, and then those sons were the fathers of Eliza and Mildred, but there's a huge age difference somehow. I don't know.
I have no idea why they felt the need to explain this. It's not relevant at all. There are so many things in this book that was like, oh, is this a larger story? Or is this relevant? Is this important? No.
Right.
Not important at all.
But then I guess after having the twin sons, the grandfather like remarried later on and had more children and then like wrote off the first children from him. So like that whole side of the family didn't get any of the inheritance. So it shouldn't have been like Eliza thought that Mildred got money just because she was young and didn't fully understand the situation. Right. But really there should be no like cause for jealousy or like trying to steal or like get Mildred out of the equation, because really Eliza and Mildred both got $0 from their grandfather. So she calls Eliza to confirm this, and Eliza does confirm that yes, I know this now, that Mildred didn't inherit anything, but you know, I didn't back then. So that explains the diary entry. So this now kind of takes Eliza out of the equation. Nancy no longer considers her because she doesn't really have the motive anymore. Nancy's thinking about it more, and she's like, okay, well, who else? Who else has
Mm-hmm.
cause or motive or anything? And she keeps thinking back to the professor whose name is Alex Kailua. So he is this folklore or this professor of Hawaiian folklore who definitely knows about this topic that Mildred was super, super interested in. So she decides that yes, he probably knew more than he was letting on. She does call the police to ask about him, and they're like, yeah, we did speak to him, but they don't really tell her any other information about him, right? And Nancy's like, well, that's really strange that, like, they say that they did speak to him, but he himself told us that the police had never
Mm-hmm.
called him. So why did he lie? She ends up Oh yeah, doesn't she call information again and like gets no, she looks through the phone book, that's what it was. And she finds both his address and his phone number in there and she's like, "Ah, what luck. Let me call him." So she calls him and she's like, won't you tell me more about Mildred? You must know something more. Like, even if you thought it was insignificant, maybe you saw something and maybe you don't realize that it was significant. Just tell me more. And he's like, actually, I'm about to go on this hike. So I can't talk right now, but maybe I could tell you about it later or whatever. And Nancy's like, okay, George, let's go hiking. We need to go because he mentions the hiking spot that he's going to. So they go and they track him down at this hiking, or they plan to go track him down at this hiking spot. And Bess decides she's going to stay behind so that she can call the police if they aren't back in a couple of hours. Thank you, Bess.
Yes,
Voice
Beth!
of reason.
Rationality. Clear-headed thinking.
So yes, this is when they find the trail that they need to follow. And then do you want to take it from here?
Sure. So they're hiking up to this beautiful Haleakala volcano, and they're going to try to hike down into the crater to see if they can find Alex down there. Which, by the way, isn't that the same volcano in Kapu Cave?
I don't remember if they say.
Okay.
I don't remember.
Okay. I thought maybe it was, but maybe it's been a long time since I played Kapu Cave. It's not my favorite, so maybe that's why I don't remember. But anyway, so they're hiking, they're about to start down the trail, but George pauses to read like an information sign, and then Nancy like scans over the crater to like see if she can see Alex from her vantage point. But just as she's doing this, a pair of hands give her like a sharp shove, and she goes tumbling over the edge. And I just think it's hilarious because they say not that she's not tumbling over her edge into the volcano. She's tumbling over the edge toward a very sharp plant.
Yeah.
Not to her death, but like to like some kind of injury.
Right.
I just think it's so funny that we think that like tumbling off a cliff towards her death is way too much to put into a children's book. So it's not that. Don't worry. She won't die. She'll just get very cut up if she falls.
Impaled by this sharp leaf.
As she's tumbling, Nancy manages to grab on to the edge, so she's literally hanging off the side of the cliff.
Yes.
Thankfully, George comes over to help Nancy. She's like screaming, so she comes over to help Nancy. And then a park ranger comes over and also helps like pull her up, back up onto the trail. George tells Nancy that while Nancy was falling, she saw Alex run off, get into a white car, and leave. So the ranger's there, so obviously he's overhearing all of this, and so they explain to him what happened and that they now think that Alex is potentially holding kidnapped Mildred. He's like, okay, I'm calling the police. Please don't go to Alex's house, because that's what they were discussing doing. Don't go there until the police have time to respond. It should be like 15 minutes. Please wait. Nancy's like, not into that. Let's go, George. So they like wait until the ranger is like occupied inside like a ranger station or something, and they take off to Alex's address. Once they get there, they peek in the windows, and then off the upstairs deck window, like a sliding screen door, they see Mildred stirring on a bed, and Alex like giving her like sips of water and like mopping her brow and stuff.
Ugh.
Oh, man.
At least he's looking after her a little bit.
Right. But at this, Nancy and George are like, we are not about to stand around and wait for the police. We're going right in there, which I thought was kind of insane. Like,
yeah.
You're standing on the other side of the door, hidden, looking in. You can see that he's not injuring Mildred in this current moment. Like, he's giving her water. I mean, maybe the water's drugged or something. I don't know. I guess you wouldn't know.
Right.
But it seems like he's taking care of her. You could wait probably the 5 minutes it's going to take for the police to get here for some backup.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
But I think part of it, too, is that they're worried that they're not going to get the story unless they go in, find out what happened, whatever. So they go in. They barge in and they confront Alex, and then the whole story comes tumbling out. Apparently, he overheard Mildred on the plane talking about her upcoming mystery novel and about the Night Marchers. Apparently, Alex is also writing a mystery novel about Night Marchers, and apparently he, needs this to go well and be successful in order for him to achieve tenure.
This is where it falls apart.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. He's supposed to be a professor of history, correct?
That's what I thought. I'm like, if you're writing a book, wouldn't it be more, not necessarily nonfiction, but it would be more research and, more about historical facts about
definitely
Hawaiian mythology.
Not a fiction novel.
Where Mildred is definitely writing fiction, yeah.
Definitely you would not be able to achieve tenure as a history professor based off of a non-fiction novel.
A fiction novel, yeah.
A fiction novel.
Right.
I mean, if you were an English professor, a creative writing professor or something, I could see that if you had a very successful novel that was out or something, that might earn you tenure. As a history professor, that seems crazy to me.
You would want it to be factual, research-based.
Right.
Be collecting your sources, not be worried that the book won't sell as well if someone else writes a fiction novel that's also a mystery.
Yeah, but that's totally his concern, is that Mildred's book is going to somehow compete with his own mystery novel. And so, therefore, on the plane, when he learns this, he decides, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to lure her back to my house. And the plan for him is to just, occupy her when she goes to the bathroom or something, get onto her laptop, steal her research, and, delete it from her laptop so that she doesn't have it anymore. And then that sets her back and gives him enough of an edge to complete it.
Why not just steal her bag at the airport?
Right? But also, that doesn't work. What he actually does is knock her out. He hits her with his fist, I want to say, or over the head too hard with something.
So hard that it knocks her unconscious for what?
4 days.
5 days now?
For days she's unconscious. Well, that's right, because she's an elderly woman.
Yeah, they say she's almost 75, right? Or 70 years old. Real, yeah.
She's aging. And he knocks her over the head because he's worried that her book is going to compete with his. This is the lamest motive.
Yeah.
He also does admit that he forged the note that they found and left it for Eliza and lured Eliza there by pretending to be a night marcher and putting on a spooky voice or something when she was half asleep.
How did he get her handwriting so accurate?
I don't know. He also admitted to luring Nancy to Haleakala on purpose to try to push her into the volcano.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But he says, oh, don't worry. I'm really a good guy. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I promise. What?
I kidnapped someone on accident. It's fine.
It was all an accident. It all got out of hand. What the? I'm sorry. Your excuse after knocking an elderly woman over the head unconscious, luring someone, pushing somebody over the edge of a trail to cause physical harm.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing about that makes you a good guy.
Right.
There is no possible reason for you to do that is a good reason. And it is certainly not, her book was going to do better than mine.
Right. Her book that was, didn't they say it was even planned to come out at a different time than his book was? They weren't even going to be released together?
Release date because the book hasn't been written.
Oh, it's so bad.
I cannot.
Yeah, that was my biggest issue with it. This whole motive how everything went down. Just really, dude.
Oh, this guy is a sociopath of the highest order. I also have other things to say about it that I have questions about that we'll have to talk about too.
Yes.
But anyway, the police come, they take Alex into custody, they take Mildred to the hospital. Mildred is already, like, looking more energized, she's okay, she's, like, fully woken up, and is already excited at the prospect of using this altercation in her mystery novel, which she says will feature Nancy and George.
Of course it will.
This is the point where my brain broke.
Yeah.
I was like, this is too meta. This is a Nancy Drew book that I'm reading about Mildred Wirt Benson writing a Nancy Drew book.
About Nancy Drew solving her own kidnapping.
About Nancy Drew solving this mystery that I'm reading. Yes. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy. Then we get a little ending wrap-up scene of Nancy, Bess, George, and Harriet all enjoying refreshments by the beach. And this is very odd, this ending scene.
Yeah.
Because we learn that Ed and Harriet, like, confessed to Nancy that they were actually following her originally because they knew who she was right away. And they were following her originally to see if she would lead them to any mystery that they could, like, use in a book, because also they write books themselves.
I guess.
Okay. But then when Mildred went missing, obviously they decided to enlist her help. But that's why they were being so creepy, quote unquote, at the beginning. I'm sorry, you were creepy throughout?
Yeah, the whole time. There was nothing they did that wasn't creepy. Not until we get the, like, scene with Harriet crying because her friend is gone, and Nancy decides that that's sincere enough that she doesn't need to suspect them anymore. Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
This book, what the heck is going on? I am not convinced at all that Nancy actually solved that mystery.
No.
There seemed to be so much more going on that we have no concept of.
Yeah.
Especially with Ed and Harriet. All of their excuses for all of it were very, like, not convincing.
Yeah, it's really bizarre.
Like, this whole, like, oh, we had a business emergency. Okay, fine. But except if that was really an emergency, how could you turn around and fly to Hawaii, like, a day later? Clearly it wasn't that big of an emergency. And if it wasn't that big of an emergency, then why didn't you just let somebody else handle it and go search for your friend if that's what you were so concerned about?
Right.
Which clearly they were, because Harriet was super upset about it.
Seems suspicious.
Also, this is my biggest question mark from this mystery, is Jamie and Robin.
Yeah.
Okay. This is the thing. He was saying that he flew to San Francisco to look at colleges, but that the professor was showing him colleges because the professor was looking for jobs. If the professor is trying to achieve tenure,
right? Why is
he's not looking for other jobs.
Why would he?
Why would he? He's trying to achieve tenure so that he doesn't have to do that. So then my question is, if he's clearly not really looking for jobs, is he showing Jamie schools? Does Jamie think he's looking for other jobs? What is Jamie actually doing in San Francisco?
I think in the book, Jamie tried to, like, explain the college tours a little bit, but it didn't make any sense. Like, no, it doesn't answer any of that.
It doesn't make any sense with what we learned at the end about the whole book thing.
Right.
And tenure. So my thought is, well, clearly Jamie and Robin are involved in this somehow. Like, clearly they're lying, because also when Nancy brings it up in person, they're very shifty about it. They actually physically shift in their seats and seem uncomfortable. So why would they seem uncomfortable if it was totally normal and just a weird happenstance that Nancy happened to bring it up?
Right. Maybe now, because this is like the police have talked to them, random Nancy has called them, even though they don't know who she is. And then now these perfect strangers are also asking. Maybe, I mean, that would make me a little uncomfortable as well. If I had nothing to do with something and now 3 separate groups have happened to have asked me about it, I'd be like, is somebody trying to drag me into this? Am I, like, being falsely accused? You know, maybe there's that, but it absolutely points to something else too. So,
but also, if that were the case, then it would just be Jamie who's uncomfortable, because Robin wouldn't know about that.
True. Yes. Very good point.
I mean, clearly what actually happened is this is just a situation that's supposed to make us as a reader suspicious when it actually doesn't amount to anything.
Right.
But that's bad writing.
It
and
is.
so I don't want to actually believe that this is just poor writing. I want to, of course, try to find a greater reason for the conspiracy behind what's actually going on.
Maybe they knew, maybe they didn't help, but they knew something was up with the professor.
They had
Yeah.
to have known something.
Yeah.
I think it is hilarious to think that in these books, at least in the girl detective books, that really it's not that the mystery writing is bad. It's that Nancy is just absolutely not a good detective and doesn't actually solve any of these mysteries. She just misses just like a bunch of like serious big things that are happening.
Oh gosh. Oh goodness.
Because also we never really learn what the actual deal is between Mildred and Eliza. Clearly things aren't super peachy there.
Right. I mean, maybe they are now. Maybe it was genuinely just they had a weird childhood.
Yeah, she could have just
they grew
and
up.
she could have just been upset and stressed and defensive because of the situation. But yeah, I don't know. I just think it's funnier to think that we just missed it. We just don't get to know.
Well, and I was annoyed that like we didn't have a scene where Harriet, where Mildred and Eliza are reunited at the end.
Yeah. Or Harriet and Ed and Eliza.
Yeah.
Or Harriet, Ed, and Mildred.
Right.
Because that was the whole point. But while Mildred's in the hospital, they're just all enjoying like their drinks on the beach.
Yep.
What? She's in the hospital. We should be there.
They should have had like a reunion scene in the hospital where the doctor's like, she's good to go home. And then Eliza comes in and they have the reunion. And then Ed and Harriet,
take her home. Yeah.
Yeah, it should be fine. But no, we don't get that. We never go back to San Francisco. That's just dropped.
Ed and Harriet would be like, okay, let's go home. And then Mildred would say, no, I can't go home. I got to research the night march.
Yeah. That would have been nice.
That would have been funny.
Yeah. We don't even really get to know Mildred at all. We just like see her in the very end scene where she's like not even fully conscious yet even. So we don't get to hear anything from her.
Although there is something that I kind of like about that because we only kind of hear about her and experience her through like other people's like image of her, Ed and Harriet's and Eliza's, mostly about her being like this really spunky, like go get 'em, action packed or whatever. And then that kind of jives with when we speak to her later. But that's so akin to like how we like as the reader actually know like of Mildred is she's just kind of like this mythic like personality in like Nancy Drew history of like she's an adventurer, she's like a real life Nancy Drew, she was like out doing adventurous stuff even into like her older age. And so there's something about that feels very like
that's true.
It's really Mildred, Yeah.
That's a good point.
So,
that's a good point.
I like that, but yeah.
Oh well.
Yeah. I will say, so in this book, one thing that I really appreciated, I feel like in the other girl detective books at the end, whenever we get like our answer to like what's the solve of the mystery, we always get it like after the confrontation. Like we don't actually get the confrontation between Nancy and the bad guy. It's like we're about to have the confrontation and then we skip it and we just get like the resolution from somebody else's mouth afterwards. But in this one we actually got the resolution, like the motive and everything that happened straight from like the perpetrator's mouth, which I felt was like, yay, so much more satisfying to like have the bad guy confess, than not hear that. And I know that like that's maybe not as realistic, like the bad guy probably wouldn't confess, like they probably would just shut up and not say anything. But I don't know, I really appreciated it.
No, that was a very nice touch. That was different than the other books that we've read.
So yeah, I think there are some standout things to this that definitely make it better than the other ones, but overall I feel like it just has just as many plot holes as all the rest of the Nancy Drew books. Yeah. Which is unfortunate, but oh well. It was still fun. It was still a fun read.
Yeah.
I will say, at the beginning, Nancy mentions Ned.
Yes.
And they talk about like how she misses Ned, or like George and Bess kind of like tease her about it or something. But Nancy like specifically says that like she uses mysteries to distract herself when she's away from Ned. And I think that this is a much better read on the whole situation than the whole Nancy is preoccupied with mysteries, is that she uses mysteries to distract herself when she's away from Ned.
That is
from
nice.
Ned.
Yeah.
I thought that was cute.
But... I mean, we know that that's not the case. She's actually just
No,
away
I
from
know.
Ned. And yeah, but no, that is nice. She can tell herself that if she wants to.
Sure. Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, also, Jamie is apparently super hot, and she mentions that and brings that up, and she's certainly not thinking about Ned then. She's like, I just think we need to go to Maui just to make sure, and let's take surfing lessons with him, and let's go out to dinner with him afterwards.
After he compliments her.
Yeah.
How pretty she is.
On her quick thinking and how brave she was facing the shark.
Well, and I'll say as well, that alias she uses, she calls herself Nancy Marvin. So when Bess comes over and introduces herself as Bess Marvin, he's like, oh, it makes sense because you're just both so beautiful. It tracks that you're related.
And George rolls her eyes.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. Yeah, she thinks she's clever, even though she called herself Nancy on the phone to the guy, and then she's Nancy Marvin. I don't know. Whatever.
Oh.
Nancy does, not to change the subject too much, but Nancy does also say that she says Hawaii is the only vacation destination that would be a better spot to visit than San Francisco, like in the whole world.
Oh, yeah, she also calls San Francisco prettier than Paris at the beginning, too.
Like Nancy. Of all the places you could go in the world, you think San Francisco is number 1, Hawaii is number 2, and then everything...
Hawaii's number 1.
Oh, sorry, Hawaii's
San Francisco's number 2. Paris is number 3.
Yes, and then everywhere else is just garbage. It's way further down on the list than any of those.
So hilarious.
I've never been to Hawaii or San Francisco. I'm sure they're both incredible, but I can't imagine that San Francisco is like the number 1 spot in the entire world. Like if you could pick any city to go to, again, I'm sure it's great. I'm sure there's wonderful things to do there. I'm sure it's a beautiful city with a beautiful history and like all that, but maybe not a beautiful history. Very interesting history, but
yeah. Storied.
Yeah, it's a very storied. Yes, that's a much better word. I'm sorry. I know that there's a lot of not beautiful things that have happened in San Francisco as well, but is there no other city in the entire planet that might be a bigger draw than San Francisco? Not to hate on it. Again, I'm sure it's great, but
right.
Really?
Well, it's also just so funny because Nancy is supposed to be this like incredibly well-traveled person. Like she's supposed to have gone to so many places, but she's like, my God, San Francisco. So great. It's better than Paris.
Yeah.
Better than Chicago. Better than London. Better than New Zealand. Better than, like, all of these other places that I don't know where she's actually been in the Girl Detective series, but, like Nancy is clearly well-traveled. So it's just... it's like, okay, Nancy, I guess, if that's your jam.
Yeah.
Okay. Can we talk about a little bit how, like, Harriet and Ed's biggest vibes are creepy.
Yeah.
And, like, they're based off of Harriet Stratemeyer and Edward Stratemeyer.
Right. I do like that in the end we learn that their relationship actually is a positive one, which may or may not have been the real case in real life. I think that there was some animosity, especially towards the end of their careers between Harriet and Mildred. But I do like that they portrayed that in a positive light, that it really was them caring about one another, and that's what spawned all this. But still, I
just think it's interesting as like a choice from Simon and Schuster.
Yeah.
Because like I think a ghostwriter or whatever can come up with whatever they would like to, but clearly somebody had to read this, approve it at Simon and Schuster.
Oh, yeah.
And Simon and Schuster, like that was like a contentious thing of like taking over the publishing of Nancy Drew from
Gross and Dunlap.
Gross and Dunlap. And so it's just kind of like to call that out and be like, actually, we're going to portray them as like these incredibly creepy people. It's like, ethically, I don't know how I feel about that.
And then the weird way to justify it all in the end, like actually, it was only because they were researching you, Nancy, so that they could use your adventures for a mystery.
Like, that makes it any less creepy.
Right. They're so creepy. They're so rude as well. And
Well, and Harriet at the beginning being all cold and, like,
Mhm.
distant until she realizes that it's Nancy, and then she's like, oh,
hey.
What?
Hey, dear, come here. Let me buy you a hot chocolate. And then follow
the
you to lunch
heck?
and dinner and
what
Hawaii.
are we trying to say about Harriet Stratemeyer?
I know. And then Bess being the only voice of reason, like, it's fine. And Nancy's like, I don't see any issue with accepting a plane ticket from someone I just met an hour ago, but whatever.
Oh, man. There are so many different directions that this mystery could have gone.
Right.
So many different directions.
Yeah, seriously.
And we ended up with hit her over the head because he was worried that her book would do better than his. That's where we end up.
Yeah.
Well.
I could even see, like, she was gonna, I don't know, like, write something in her book that was disrespectful of Hawaiian culture, or she was gonna get points about the mythology really wrong, and he wanted to stop that somehow. Maybe he was just really passionate about it, but just, my book is on a deadline and I don't want competition. That's really weird.
Well, what I thought, I thought that this was how it was going to go, because Nancy brings up a couple times, I think she brings up, I forget to who and in what context, but, like, could somebody be trying to use the Night Marchers, like, mythology to cover up, like, crime, like smuggling or something like that?
That would be really interesting, yeah.
And I was like, well, definitely we gotta go with that, right?
Yeah.
We gotta go with that, because that's super cool. I mean, obviously not co-opting mythology of a culture to cover up crimes is cool, but it would be a cool premise. But we didn't go that way at all. That's also what made me think that it was influencing Kapu Cave.
Right.
So, yeah. Because I thought, well, you could definitely read this book, read the ending, be like, well, that's a stupid ending. What would be way more interesting is what Nancy briefly mentioned a couple times that didn't end up happening.
They even had the thought and didn't even go with it, but
yeah.
Oh well.
Yeah.
Oh well.
Yeah. Flashlight score.
Oh, I got two more little things.
Oh, yes, please.
Okay. At one point when, after Bess gets the handwriting sample from Jamie, she's using what they call a portable fax machine that belongs to George. Okay, now, I've never sent a fax. I don't know if this is a real item that existed out in 2005. Like, were portable fax machines a thing? Is that real?
I do not know. I mean, I still fax today because I have to occasionally because of my work and, like, confidential information. And for some reason, we still have not moved past the time where fax is, like, an acceptable use of technology. It baffles me because we can also do, like, encrypted emails and stuff, and that's typically what I tend to try to do, but sometimes it doesn't work and I actually have to fax things. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I definitely have never used a portable one, but I do know that faxing used to be way more of a thing.
Of course.
So I could see it being possible, but the fact that George would pack one and bring one on her San Francisco vacation, by the way, not Hawaiian vacation, San Francisco vacation, is crazy to me.
Sorry, I've just Googled it. There's small fax machines that you can get, but they're still like the size of a printer. But okay, exactly though. That's the point. She brought it on vacation with her and then has the audacity to poke fun at Bess for not packing lighter. You
You're so right. She must have put that thing in her carry-on or something and like had to like
yeah.
And she's like, Bess, I can't believe you brought so many clothes. Oh my god.
What were you planning on doing in San Francisco that required the use of a fax machine that was so important that you couldn't just ask the hotel to borrow theirs if you absolutely needed one? Or like go to a Kinko's or something?
Every hotel has like a fax machine, especially in 2005, every hotel had a fax machine.
Right. Or at least there's like, I mean, Kinko's and FedEx were a thing back then that you could have gone and just used one there. Right. And then it's like this. Why did you have to bring all of your dresses? Anyway.
Oh, my cheeks hurt from laughing.
But then my other thing was that Nancy calls Eliza crazy. Like she
I missed
let
that.
me find the quote. So this is after she's just asked Eliza about the inheritance, and she's confirmed like neither Mildred or Eliza got anything from the inheritance. And Nancy says, "Don't get me wrong, I was thrilled that Eliza wasn't guilty. Crazy as she was, I liked her and I wished her well." Crazy because
Crazy as she was.
she owns a lot of birds and believes in
Yeah, that's
ghosts.
why I was like, is it the birds? Because I understand that a little bit.
But that's not crazy. Like, I
No,
mean,
no,
I'm
no,
crazy
no.
about my dogs. Like, does that,
Well, crazy
like,
is also
these are
like a
pets.
taboo word. Yeah, you also
Right.
shouldn't use the word crazy because it's not. It has a lot of like historical like
Yeah.
bad juju.
That's really
Like,
harsh, Nancy, for someone who
yeah.
is concerned about her cousin because she legitimately believes that something bad has befallen her.
Right.
Possibly these ghosts that she believes in, or that it's that she owns birds and likes her pets a lot. That makes her crazy. I was like, really, Nancy? That's harsh. But no, that's all I got. Yep. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't like that. Gross.
Alas.
Yes. Okay. Do you have anything else?
No, not really. Not really. Oh, I did. Oh, though I did want to say there is something about this book series and about like these books in particular that I was literally, this was a shower thought that I had today. I was standing in the shower and I was
I'm
thinking
ready.
about, we're going to record today. What am I going to talk about? Or whatever. And I was like, you know what I think is the biggest flaw in this book series and also in like the original mystery stories is the fact that we have to draw such like a demarcated line between our good guys and our bad guys.
Yeah.
And that our good guys have to be morally flawless and that only the bad guys, only like the actual perpetrators of the crimes are the ones who are quote unquote bad.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was thinking about like what Alex was saying about how no, he's actually a good guy.
Yeah.
Clearly that is not the case. Clearly he's not a good guy. And that is very obvious, even to Nancy, who calls it out in the book and being like, that is not true. You are bad, Clearly you've done these things. You made bad choices or whatever. But still he believes he's a good guy. But that's okay because we know he's bad. However, all of our good guys, we have to go so far in like determining, no, they are paragons of moral virtue. There is nothing morally complicated or gray about them at all. Like, when I was thinking about Jamie, and how like he has to be totally disconnected from this in order for us to consider him to be a quote unquote good guy, just because he can't be connected to the crime in any way, even if he didn't commit the crime, for us to consider him to be a good guy.
Right.
And I just feel like that leaves out so much of reality. I understand it's a children's book, but it leaves out so much of like reality and makes the mysteries that could be so much more complex and interesting into something that just that is like simple and like not convincing and like kind of feels fractured, right? It feels like, well, we're missing things because clearly this person knew something about it, or like,
Yeah.
So I feel, and we see that a lot in the original mystery stories as well, right? We get like, our bad guys are bad guys just because they're bad. And don't worry, we completely absolve this person who is just, a random passerby or whatever.
Right.
So I was just thinking about that and how this book kind of really illustrates that for me.
Or maybe they were involved, but really they were forced into helping out. And then they felt bad, so they came clean and helped Nancy in the end.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking about Password to Larkspur Lane, where the guy that works for the grandparents like was caught breaking in and all that. But then, really, he was trying to help. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think I do think it's probably a lot to do because of the fact that it's a children's book, right? And they don't want to be the people to explain to children that there are like shades of gray in the world. It's like, no, like we can't do that. We can't be in the position of doing that. We can only say there are good guys and bad guys, and we need to make it very clear who they are. Right. But I just feel like in 2005, can we not evolve a little bit past that? Way of thinking. I understand in, the 1930s, the 1950s, how that was a difficult line to walk, especially when you consider like the newness of like media being directed to children.
Right.
Like I understand how maybe we weren't ready for that kind of complexity.
Sure.
But now it feels like, can we not make it a little bit more interesting and more realistic? But alas.
That's okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Well. Good point.
Yeah, I'm Flashlights girl. I would probably. It's so hard because I want to judge it based on the rest of the Girl Detective series, and if I judge it based on the rest of the Girl Detective series, I give this like easily a 4 or 5.
Yeah.
Because it's so much better than the rest of them. But I can't do that. I have to judge it on the score of the rest of all of the Nancy Drew content that we have done.
Yes.
And if that's the case, I guess I'll give it. Oh God, I don't know, a 3.
Yeah.
But like a low 3.
Yeah. I feel bad because, again, I liked it, but do I only think that because I've recently read so many bad ones? Like,
right.
Had I just come from reading, like, Larkspur Lane, I'd be like, this is trash. 1. Like, no.
Or like, the final scene, like a file. You would give this a 2 easily.
Or even, I'm thinking about, like, the games that we gave 3s. Like, is this better than Waverly Academy? No. Absolutely not.
Yeah, it's nowhere near it.
Yeah, so I don't know. Yeah, I'll say 3. I'll say 3 as well. I don't want to be too harsh on it because, again, it was like a relief from what we had been reading. But okay, I'm happy with a 3. That's fine.
Okay, cool. Oh, speaking of having read a bunch of stinkers recently. Up next, this is the one we've been most excited to read in the Girl Detective series. This is the whole reason why we wanted to read the Girl Detective series, is the book that we're going to cover next. Yes. I think I would go so far as to say.
Yeah.
I'll just read the back before I mention what it is. So,
okay, yes.
Nancy was going to tell you about this big mystery, but she just disappeared. Poof. Just like that. So now, Bess, Ned, and me, George, have the case of the missing detective on our hands. We've got to find Nancy. Let me tell you, this sleuthing thing is no joke. We've worked with Nancy on lots of cases, but we've never had to do it ourselves, and the stakes have never been so high. We think this might have to do with that possible museum theft Nancy was talking about. We're just not sure yet, but we're working on it. Wish us luck. Where's Nancy? So this is the super mystery in the Nancy Drew Girl Detective series called Where's Nancy?
I think it's the first one. I think they did 3 or 4 of these, I want to say. But I think it's the first super mystery in this series, which is very exciting because we've never had one written from somebody else's point of view besides just the narrator or Nancy.
Right.
And now we get it from Beth and George. Or is Ned one of the narrators as well? Or is it just Beth and George?
I think so. So I see George, Bess, maybe it's just George and Bess. George, Bess, George. Yeah, maybe it just alternates between George and Bess.
Yeah.
Bummer. I would love to see some Ned perspective.
Right? That'd be good. Maybe also, in the future we'll get that.
It looks like the person who owned this book before annotated it a little bit.
Ooh, I wonder what they thought of it.
So I'm excited to maybe read what somebody else thought about it.
Well, that's exciting.
It's very exciting.
Let's hope
we
it's
love
a
our
good
super
one.
mysteries. Let's hope it's good. Yeah.
I promise after this next one, we will move on to better books.
Oh, God, please. No more Girl Detective. No more.
Yeah, I'm sick of it. But that's okay, because this one should be amazing.
That is okay. I do have to say, Corey, that I am so grateful to have started this podcast with you.
Oh, me too.
Because it really is just such a joy to get to talk to you, even when we don't particularly enjoy the books. Yeah. I just love spending this time with you.
Me too, yeah. Honestly, sometimes the bad ones are even better, because if it's good, it's good, and it's like, yeah, it was good. What else is there to say? But if it's bad, it's like, let's trash it. And then that makes it hopefully more funny. I don't know if sometimes it's hard to stomach, like the last one that was just brutal, but sometimes it's so bad it's funny. But
yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah. We will see you next time, Regular Drews, when we discuss Where's Nancy.
Yeah. Join us then.
Bye, y'all.
Thank you for listening to Regular Nancy Drew. Email us at regularnancydrew@gmail.com.
If you like this episode, make sure to rate, review, and subscribe.
You can also follow us on Instagram at Regular Nancy Drew and Twitter at RegularND.
You can also support us on Patreon. Patrons at the $3 level vote on upcoming episode topics and get exclusive access to our Scoop Sesh series.
And all patrons receive early access to each episode as well as weekly bonus content.
And to all you regular Drews out there, thanks for listening.